So, all right, guys, we got to get this one right. On three, we're going to say, welcome back to Extraordinary Thoughts, put on their mind. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to Mine.
And we back.
That'll work right there.
Yeah.
And we back. And we
Yeah.
back. And we back. And we back. And we
Y'all did y'all best. And that's all that matters.
Now, before we get started with this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this episode, share this podcast, and if you can, do me a favor, head on down to the review section and leave an honest review, because this podcast was dedicated to helping us become a better version of ourselves. And I don't know what that version is, but I know that just like we need a little bit more money, just like we need a little bit more sleep, just like we need a little bit more of anything in life, we deserve to be a little better than what we are right now. What's going on, everybody? So as we get started with today's episode, there's a couple of things I really I got to get off my chest before we get started. And the first one is it's 2022. You know what I mean? And I remember as a kid, right when technology was really taking off and a couple of us were getting phones. And they would tell parents, you know what I mean? Like they would tell parents to check your kids' cell phone devices to make sure that they're not talking to strangers. Here it is in 2022, going into 23. And I feel like kids, check your parents' cell phone devices because they might be talking to a scammer. All right, I don't know who needs to hear this, but hey, if your mama got a dang on phone, you know what I mean? Like if your mom or dad has a phone in 2022 and they on social media, I need you to check their phone. I need you to check their phone. I need you to go in their messages, and I need you to make sure that they are not talking and falling in love with a scammer, because this is getting ridiculous. All right, this is really getting ridiculous. Just recently, I had somebody reach out to me. And, they were under the assumption that we were in a relationship. And they even went on and said, I have been sending money to you. I said, does it look like you've been sending me money? Like, does it look like I've been taking money from you? And I know the way that I approach this, let me rephrase that. My attitude towards this is definitely not like how everybody else always just like, man, I'm so sorry that this happened. Unfortunately, that wasn't me. You have been scammed. I usually have an attitude about it. I usually have an attitude. I have an attitude for two reasons. One, I have an attitude with the scammer because you're utilizing my identity. You're fooling other people. You know what I mean? And then I'm the one that ends up taking the backlash from the situation. And you just disappear to create another fake account. But I also have an issue with the person that got scammed too. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm upset with the scammer. I also have an issue with the person who got scammed because I look at their methods. I look at their methods, and it pisses me off that people fall for this shit. I really do. Like, she sent me a picture, and the picture that she sent, he drew on the picture in a sense of I don't know if he was probably. I don't know how he ended up doing this, but he probably hit something and ended up marking on the picture. And I'm like, come on, man. You really fell for this? And you go to their pages and you know that this is a fake page just by looking at it. Just from what they're saying, just based off of their name. I think this time around I was Thomas Demetrius Thickman, which doesn't make sense. The naming doesn't even make sense. So it's 2022, and if your mama or dad is over the age of 40, check their phones because they're probably getting scammed. And because of these situations, and you could tell my frustration with this because this isn't the first time this has actually happened to me. This is the 6th time this year that I've had to have this type of conversation with somebody, that you haven't been sending me money, that we're not in a relationship, that no, I am not in X, Y, and Z location. I do not do that. It's very frustrating. And I'm pretty sure there's a couple of other military service members that listen to this show that have actually been on this show, that have been scammed. Austin, Sergeant Major Bull, Koke, they, oh man, they can tell you some stories. But that's just one thing I really just needed to get off my chest. The second thing that I really needed to get off, and what I'm going to do is put it up on Instagram. Like, once again, if you haven't already, go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Meech Speaks. Once again, Meech is spelled what? Meech is spelled Meech. But the topic that I'm going to put up is, do men really want women to be submissive? I'll say that one more time. Do men really want women to be submissive? Now, I don't know when this got started. Actually, I do. I ain't even about to sit here and lie. I know when it got started. Right around the time when, like, Kevin Samuels, R.I.P., he had started becoming, like, real popular on Instagram. And everybody was quoting what he was saying, you know what I mean? And when I say everybody, it really was just mostly the men that were quoting what he was saying. And don't get me wrong, like, he would say things about men that women need to pay attention to. But a lot of the times he always has something to say about women. And one thing that kind of like stood out was the idea that a woman needs to be submissive. Now, I was raised by like a single black woman, Father was an alcoholic, drug addict. That woman was my mom, dad, Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, the handyman. She was everything. But submissive? No, she was not. And I've seen her in relationships. She wasn't really a submissive woman. And when I hear when men talk about like a woman needs to be submissive, and as they sit back and they describe it, you supposed to cook for me, clean for me, take care of me, be there for me. And it kind of, and I'm doing the best that I can to sound like an insecure man. Like I'm doing the best that I can, because that's what I think the men are when they tell a woman that they need to be submissive. I kind of feel like they're insecure. But when I hear another man say that he wants a woman to be submissive, I'm not even about to lie to you. It kind of sounds like he wants her to be his mother. You know what I mean? Like, when I hear a man say that he wants a woman to be submissive, it really sounds like he wants her to be his slave. That's what it sounds like to me. I'm gonna just keep it a buck. That's what it sounds like to me. Like when I hear another man say, "Oh, I want you to be submissive." It sounds like you want her to bend the knee. Like it sounds like fucking Game of Thrones, bro. Like you really, it's giving them vibes. Like bend the knee to me. And I know this ain't today's episode. I promise you, this is not today's episode. This is probably a potential episode, but if you have to ask a woman to be submissive to you, then you need to take a step back and ask yourself, are you somebody that are you somebody that you would submit to? Because I don't think that that's something that needs to be asked. I don't think so. All right, so now that I've gotten my vocals warmed up and I got my mind rolling and got the gears turning, let's get started with today's episode. So there's this new word going around, right? Like there's this new word going around that it kind of like popped up like right after, like it formed during the pandemic, but then it really gained traction and popularity afterwards. And it's called quiet. I don't know what the hell's wrong with my words, but it's called quiet quitting. All right. And for those who don't know what quiet quitting, it's this idea that you're not outright quitting your job, but you're quitting the idea of going above and beyond. You're still performing your daily duties, but you are no longer subscribing to the hustle culture mentality that work has to provide. And I'm gonna just keep it a buck with you. It sound like the bare it sound like the bare minimum. You feel me? Like it really sounds like the bare minimum. Like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, just do the bare minimum and that's okay. And I completely understand. I completely understand where somebody would get this idea at. You feel me? Like I really do. And I say that because, you could probably be at a job where you don't feel appreciated. You're probably at a job where you feel like you lack motivation in it. You probably feel like you're probably at a job where you're burnt the fuck out. You're probably at a job where you don't like. But why are you quietly quitting? Why are you staying? You feel me? Like why stay somewhere if you feel like all you need to do is the bare minimum and that's okay? Like why are we okay with the idea that I'm gonna go through life doing the bare minimum? It's such a scary thing. You feel me to think about, especially if that type of topic gets in the wrong hands. And when I say like the wrong hands, I'm always talking about somebody that has like a big influence that's telling people like, hey, you need to quiet quit, and they by you quietly quitting, they're going to reward you. You're there, no, they're going to fire you. And this phase, this word, this phrase, that's the word, that's it. This phrase, it only really works in certain occupations that only require you to do the bare minimum. You know what I mean? It works in occupations where going above and beyond is not rewarded. And if you find yourself in that type of job, then I get it. I get it. But imagine your doctor walk in and says like, "Hey, I'm quietly quitting." You know what I mean? Like he just doing the bare minimum in your surgery. Imagine like a teacher, and I'm a firm believer. You know what I mean? Like I'm a firm believer that teachers are probably one of the hardest working professions in America, and they don't get paid for what they really do. Say that they're quietly quitting. They're just teaching them the shit that's in the book. No passion behind it. No range behind it. No love in it. A construction worker come up to you and say like, "Hey, we just quietly quitting. We doing the bare minimum." Damn, I don't want to be in that foundation. And I try when I go into these episodes, I try not to come in it one-sided. I try to be, as neutral as possible so that way I can just give the information. But this term, this phrase, like I'm sorry, but if I'm quietly quitting at my job, I feel like I'm getting closer to quietly quitting at life. Like, yeah, it says that, not to go above and beyond at a job that's not going to reward you for doing that. But the reality is that if you're stuck somewhere, let me rephrase that because you're not stuck. If you find yourself somewhere where the bare minimum is all that's required, and and you feel like you don't need to give more. And when I say give more, have more motivation towards it. Have a little bit more passion towards it. Have this idea to go above and beyond, because this is the thing, is that shit translate in other aspects of your life. We think that like, we quietly quit at our job and then we, turn around and turn up in other aspects in our lives. No, that's not necessarily it. You will quietly quit at your job and slowly start quietly quitting out of a relationship. Slowly start quietly quitting out of your hobbies. Because when you feel like giving something isn't worth it anymore, then you won't do it. When I first started podcasting, I couldn't just go through the fucking motions of it. I had to pour 100% in. Even when I only had like 2-3 people listening to the show. Because those 2-3 people were listening to my show. You know what I mean? And when I just really want to just switch gears, because I don't know where my head be at sometimes. I'm sorry. But my dominant, the majority of the people that listen to my show, right, are in the military. And when I hear the term quietly quitting, I bet, because this was the first thing that I thought of when I heard it. I was like, how does that translate over into the military? Like, how is it that, how would people start quietly quitting in the military? And to be honest with you, I've actually experienced it. I've actually experienced seeing people do this. And it's literally just called doing the bare minimum. And in an occupation where initiative is actually rewarded, you know what I mean? In an occupation where our performance is constantly being evaluated, I could see how this could go into the military. Like I could see like a sergeant, a corporal, or somebody quietly quitting. And how it would look in the military is that they're not there early. You know what I mean? They show up when formation starts, and they there when it's time for evening formation. They do their job. That's it. When you go on like PFT, CFT, they ain't getting the first class, second class, third class. They are going to get the fucking standard. Whatever the standard is, that's the score that they're going to get. And you can't rely on that person. And the problem is, especially being in the military, is that if you can't rely on somebody, that's a dangerous sentence to have associated with you. That's a dangerous thing to have associated with you. Because people are looking at you and they're like this, I can't rely on this person. That means that this person could get me fucking killed. He could get me killed. I can't rely on him. He quietly quit. And it sounds a lot like I'm just going to do my time and get out. So for those who are experiencing quietly quitting, right? Like if you're experiencing that, I'm going to just tell you this is that you can't get mad at what you don't receive if you don't even do anything for it. You can't get mad at the rewards that you receive for the actions that you didn't do. If you're just going through life, just doing the bare minimum, you know what I mean? Just doing what's needed of you, you can't get mad at what you don't really receive. If you're showing up to work and you're just, I'm just here so I don't get fired, you can't get mad at the results. Quietly quitting is a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous mindset to have. And I'm going to just tell you right now, like if you find yourself in a place where you're consistently burnt out to the point where you're just going through the motions at your job, it might be time to leave. It might be time to leave. And now I'm not going to sit here and try to say like, oh, just quit your job. I ain't Beyonce, dog. Like, I'm not Beyonce. I'm not going to sit here and try to say like, oh, fire your job, quit your job. No. God knows. Do not walk in and say I quit. But it might be time for you to create your exit plan. Start looking for another job that you would be passionate about. Take a step back and look at your career and ask yourself, like, am I just in this career solely because it makes money? Or am I in this career because I actually enjoy it? Like, I'm a firm believer, man. Like, I'm a firm believer that you got to do what the fuck you love to do in life. Like, you can't wake up in the morning, go to work to a place that you hate. You can't wake up in the morning, go to work, and have to pretend for 8 hours out of the day. That shit's exhausting. Just to come home and then turn the fucking switch on. I don't think that's real. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have quietly quit, like you have just quit the whole idea of going above and beyond, having passion, it's time. Like, it's time to leave. And just like that, another extraordinary thought left this ordinary mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode half as much as I enjoyed making it. Stay tuned every Monday as we bring you another episode. And lastly, don't forget to like this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, and share this podcast because this podcast was dedicated to helping you become a better version of yourself. And I don't know who needs to hear that, but just like we need more sleep, just like we need more money, we deserve to be a better version of ourselves. Stay hungry, stay motivated. I'm out.